Hello, my name is Omar Castro, and my research paper was about a very controversial figure during the Tudor period, Thomas Cromwell. I was never interested to learn about British history, and honestly, I did not know much about it. However, when I read and learned about Henry's Reformation and the role that Thomas Cromwell played during that period, I was fascinated, and I decided to write my paper on Thomas Cromwell. Primarily because after reading about him, I couldn't picture Thomas Cromwell as the evil person that people normally think he was. Instead, I thought he was an effective chief minister that did what he needed to do in order to be able to execute what his king wanted. He was certainly a man ahead of his time. Since I didn't know anything about him, my research project began by learning more about his personal life before Thomas Cromwell became Henry's chief minister. I started my research project by looking for secondary sources about him at the New York City's public library, and I was able to easily find over 10 different books that were going to be truly useful when writing my paper. Surprisingly, the primary sources for my paper were the easiest to find. Nevertheless, even when I had found the primary and secondary sources that I was going to use, I was having such a hard time writing the introduction for my paper that I even thought I needed to switch the topic I was going to write about. At the end, I was able to find the information that I was looking for by carefully checking the index of each of the books that I decided to use, and with that information, I was able to write the thesis for my paper. After that, I got to work on the outline of the paper, and then I started to work on the body paragraphs of the research paper. That basically was the research process for my paper. Second, when I read Hamilton's Habits of Effective Writers, I realized that I was not being as concise as I should be, and perhaps I also need to learn how to write with more force. Third, from the feedback that I received from Professor Collins, I learned to pay attention to the format of the footnotes and also to read my paper out loud before submitting it to avoid weird or strange sentences. Fourth, I think I could improve my writing by learning how can I be more concise when writing, because I normally write with long sentences and paragraphs. I also need to learn to write with force, and also I need to get the habit of reading my papers out loud before I submit them. Also, I think it is important to start developing and creating outlines to organize my ideas before I started to write my papers.